I did another video about 13 high-level plots you could use for a Ptolus campaign. Here, I'm going to discuss the Dungeon Delving campaign plot arc in depth and give you some good, actionable advice to make your life easier as a narrator. Despite Ptolus being a city, the matrix of dungeons below the city, which is often called Ghoul's Labyrinth after Ghoul, a person from history who is either called the Skull King or the Half-God, whatever. Those dungeons offer endless adventure options for those who want to explore tunnels and fight beneath the earth. Part 4 of the Ptolus book covers a lot of information about what's below the city. Chapters 19 through 22 give specifics about what's down there, the Undercity, the sewers, and the caverns. One thing that's really frustrating, though, is in Chapter 19, there's a section discussing locations within the labyrinth, like the Fortress of the Redeemed, the Halls of Cadaris, and some more, but there's no maps provided for these locations, which I just don't understand. Maybe if you read through them, they can give you some inspiration to make up on your own. I am looking for adventure modules that would go well with these locations, but I haven't found enough to cover all of those yet. It's really frustrating that despite so many mentions of the labyrinth beneath the city, there's very little fleshed out for specific adventures into dungeons. There is a great side shot in the Ptolus book that shows the city and what's underneath, at I say high level, even though it goes down the level. 4 easy ways to start a dungeon campaign for first level characters would be, number 1, do a posting on the wall of the Delvers Guild, or really you could do a flyer anywhere that points your characters to the Chapter 33 adventure Interlude number 1, Trouble with Goblins. This is a great low-level adventure. It will take them through the city to the North Market area. It will also get them down into the dungeons and start into the sewers without them having to go through a bunch of extra hoops. This is a great starter adventure. Number 2 would be to show your characters the 5 gold piece bounty on Ratman tales. There's flyers from the city, and there's actually a flyer that you can print out or just show them inside the back of the book. You can have somebody lead them to, or have them stumble through the sewers and find the Ratman's Nest in Chapter 21. It has a good map, and it's well fleshed out. Now, if you're going to use the Ratman's Nest, you should really read about the Undercity and how people need a special key to get from the Undercity into the sewer. Typically, grates down into the sewer are actually locked to prevent anything coming up from the sewers, so it's not as easy as just jumping into a hole in some alley. The Ratman's Nest would be a really good thing for them to stumble upon if you start with Trouble with Goblins. There is a connection into the sewers. They could easily wander through the sewers for just a little bit and then stumble upon this Ratman's Nest. Also, a fantastic free sewer layout was just added to the website in the homebrew section. There's a link in the description down below. A fantastic map designer gave this away for free. I have links to him or her. You can promote them on Patreon and everything else. Check that out in the link below. Next, number 3 is joining a Waystation restocking team. The Delvers Guild actually pays people to restock the waystations that they maintain for members. Waystations are areas where in the dungeons, when you're down there, if you're down for a long time, if you need to sleep down there, it's a secure location where Delvers Guild members get a key to open those waystations, and then there's supplies in there. Well, you can use almost any random dungeon and sewer map. Then look at the random encounters tables from the book. There's sewer random encounters. They're on page 441 of the old 3.5 book and page 412 of the new 5th edition book. Then cavern random adventures are on page 416 of the 5e and 448 of 3.5. Using this route would also be good because the characters could see a flyer advertising this with good pay. Then someone at the Delvers Guild would be able to explain things to them. It would be a very, very easy way for you to narrate to them and kind of do a bit of an information dump for people that don't know anything about Ptolus. Then number 4 is you can do a Delvers Guild wall posting, or again, a flyer posted just about anywhere, tying to one of the modules that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. Let's talk about some specific pre-written adventure modules that will work well for a dungeon delving campaign. Then I'm actually going to share with you the path I took with my campaign, which is a mix of dungeon delving and other stuff. To make your life easier, I maintain a page on my unofficial Ptolus website where I am constantly adding adventures that work well with Ptolus. I'm always scouring sources and adding to this list, so follow that and check back on it from time to time. Now, here's some modules for a dungeon crawl campaign in Ptolus. I've broken them up into 2 sections. This first one is modules that were specifically created for Ptolus, and then the next is modules that you can easily adapt to work with Ptolus, even though they're not specific to the city. So number 1 is the Bain Warrens. This is one of the original things. Monty Cook actually created this for his own campaign and ran his people through it. It is totally a dungeon delving campaign. There's basically nothing above the city except for the introduction aspect. And it takes the people up into the spire. It's really fun, really exciting. I ran it for my characters. Next is the Night of Dissolution. This is not exclusively a dungeon delving campaign, but it does have quite a bit of dungeon delving involved with it. It's a really good thing where you can get some role playing in, but then also it's very dungeon heavy. Dark Tidings is another one. It's a pretty small adventure, but it is basically all dungeon delving. Then there's the Doctrine of Ghoul, which again takes place completely underground. This is one of the new 5th edition pieces that was released as part of the Kickstarter. And then also there's Queen of Lies, which is a really cool drow tie-in. Monty Cook's original campaign, they actually roused an entire army and they went down and assaulted this drow fortress. Oh, there's a lot more, but let's now talk just a few more, the ones that you can adapt to Ptolus. One of them is Out of the Abyss for 5th edition. This is a pretty cool tie-in where you start out underneath the city. If you're starting a brand new campaign and maybe you need a little time to learn Ptolus, Out of the Abyss would be a great way because your player characters start locked up in a drow prison. And if you go through all of this, it wouldn't be hard to tie in Queen of Lies and maybe some other drow-based content if that's what you're interested in. Also, if anybody's been playing D&D for a long time, the names the Sunless Citadel and the Forge of Fury should pique up your ears a little bit. These were a part of a really long adventure chain that was written for 3.5 or 3.0 technically when it came out, and they're fantastic. Well, what's awesome is Wizards of the Coast updated these to 5th edition, and they put them in a package called Tales of the Yawning Portal. Now, in addition to that, there's actually virtual tabletops. I know Roll20 has this for certain, where you can go buy it, and it's more than just those 2. It's like 7 or 9 different modules all wrapped up, and it's fantastic. I bought the Sunless Citadel to run for my kids, and everything was already done on Roll20. The tokens are in there. The information is in there. This would be a really easy way, and I think it's like $30 or something like that. If you haven't ever heard of thealexandrian.net, this is cool. He documents a ton of stuff for Ptolus campaigns, and he actually wrote 2 adventure campaign modules. He had to obfuscate them a little bit where it doesn't say anything Ptolus specific, otherwise he wouldn't have been allowed to sell them. But one of those is called The Complex of Zombies, and it's interesting. It's a dungeon delving campaign. He adds even a cool twist on some existing monsters. Something else that would be a little insane to use, but it could give you a ton of maps options, is the Old World's Largest Dungeon. It is an absolutely massive book, and it wouldn't be hard, though, for you to pick out just a few pieces if you just needed some dungeon maps, right? So let me tell you a little bit about my campaign. When we first started out, it was just a duet campaign. It was me as the narrator, and then we had one 5th level character who was Vocath. She came into the city. I won't go into too much detail, but before she went on an adventure, she met up with Talon Ursulato, who the player decided was an old flame. So now he was running 2 characters. Our first adventure was actually a short module called Tiger's Palace. I was still running my DMPC Rogue at that time. This is linked on that page I mentioned where the Ptolus Adventure modules. Then to hook into the Chapter 33 adventures, which again, there's some dungeon delving in there, but it's not exclusively, so read through that. Maybe you can just use parts of it. I used Vo's tie to House Cath to have them protect the kid in the production, the boy who could sing. I don't want to do any spoilers, so narrators, you can go read about that. Later, we started the Night of Dissolution and the Bain Warrens modules. On my website, on the page that actually talks about the adventure modules, I have a specific link that gives you some advice on how to run both the Bain Warrens and the Night of Dissolution concurrently. You will have to increase the difficulty of the encounters if you decide to do this, because that's not what they were originally built for. That's how I did it, but I was also starting with 5th level characters, so I already knew that I was going to have to increase those. The greatest thing about Ptolus for a dungeon campaign is the catacombs beneath the city are nearly limitless. If you find a dungeon module that you like, chances are you can make it work. If you're interested in getting to know more about Ptolus, check out my website, ptol.us. I've mentioned it several times. I put a link to all of the stuff that I just talked about in the description below. Also, we have a Ptolus-specific Discord that's got like 130 people on it right now. It's been fantastic. There's great other narrators in there that you can bounce ideas off of, ask things about, and it's great conversation, and it's really nice to have that kind of support group. Do all the YouTube crap, like, subscribe, leave a comment for the algorithm, all that kind of stuff. You get it. You've watched a YouTube video before. Until then, I pray you stay out of the shadow of the spire.